Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Bambi Plattfuss. This is Almost Pinball, your Visual Pinball podcast. I'm your host today, and with me is my co-host Ace Danger.
Yo, what's up, people?
The topic of today is I want to make a virtual pinball machine, and we came to that topic because Ace is starting to buying all the things he needs to make a virtual pinball, and he asked me a lot of questions like, hey, what parts do I need? And I was like, hey, dude, we could make a cool episode out of that, and many people want to hear that. So, Ace, let's start with the first question.
So where do we begin? I mean, there's a lot of little mini things that go into making the Vpin work to the best of your ability. So DOF, what do you need for DOF? What do you need for
I'd say let's start first thing.
A controller board?
Let's start easy. Let's start with the most important thing. If you never had played a virtual pinball machine, go look at the map around you. If there's something in your area who has a good working virtual pinball machine, go there and play it. It's the first thing I would recommend to anyone want to buy or building a virtual pin. Play it once before you start making it.
Because right, you gotta have sex with her first before you buy her. Right?
In German we say you don't buy the cow before you tried the milk. Yeah.
Right.
And it helped me back in the day to get my decision to the virtual pinball getting, and because I had an Data East Maverick, and it got broke because I got a lightning struck in our home, and I was like, I'm search for an alternative or a new pin, and I was lucky that two in my areas had a virtual pinball, and they said, hey, come here, have a look, let's have a drink, and we play some games, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna go there. I went to Thomas, and I grabbed a couple of beers with him. I had a really great night at back then with him, and I was like, dude, I really need a virtual pinball machine, and I was like, I'm gonna make that. So that would be my first recommendation. If you can, go play a virtual pinball cap, and a good virtual pinball cap. What is a good virtual pinball cap? We come back later, but you're gonna need someone with a good virtual pinball cap.
Oh yeah, because it will put a bad taste in your mouth if you play a bad one.
Yeah, it's like
you'll never want to touch another fucking virtual pinball if you play a really bad one. You just won't.
Hey, it's like saying, I want to get an old timer, and then you get an drive. The first one is gonna real restorated one, like a Porsche 911 from 1960 or something like that, in bad condition, and then you drive. You will have like, I want that Porsche. It's the best thing I ever can own. And if your first old timer would be an old rusted Beetle, VW Beetle or something like that, you would say, wow, I don't want an old timer. Fuck that shit. Same experience. So, what is a good virtual pinball machine? A good virtual pinball machine needs some things like you need a good, decent PC inside.
Right.
I
was right about to ask you, what would you recommend? How do you recommend people taking the time to build their own PC, or is there a link in the description that we could put for folks?
I'm gonna put down the link to our FAQ from the Visual Pinball Junkies Group, and where I made system recommendations for a full HD and 4K systems. All tested by myself. I made with a couple of friends in a shop and benchmarking tests, and those were the results where I would say you're future-proofed and the best buck for the money. So you need a good quad-core processor like an AMD Ryzen 5 2600. You need a decent graphic cards like an RTX 2016. You need a decent amount of RAM, like 16 gigabytes. Would recommend
16 gigabytes.
Yeah, 16 gig, because modern CPUs run better and faster with more RAM, and you will need a good NVMe SSD card, not a hard drive. You need an SSD or NVMe with at least 250 gigabytes. The more you can afford, the better it is, and a good cooling. Also, I would recommend gonna build a PC yourself. Normally you are cheaper than buying a pre-made PC normally.
Yeah. It just depends on whether or not you want to put time into it.
Building the PC is not the hardest thing, and also not time demanding. The most demanding thing is getting the correct parts, like the correct motherboard with the correct
compatible.
CPU, the compatible things.
Compatible.
It's a hard English word for a German guy like me.
It's okay. I don't know 3 words in German, so.
Yeah. And the next thing a good virtual pinball should have, it would be DOF for me. Real solenoids and something like that.
That's fucking cool.
So if you play the game, it makes real clack and noises and shakes and blinks and LEDs or something like that, like a real machine. So you get a feeling of the real deal. I played virtual pinball machines without real DOF, like with the Pullman's DOF, the SSF thing.
Now you help me with this. Now the key thing though too is the display. What kind of display you have is going to make a big difference.
That's a big difference. I'm going to come back to that later after I'm going to explain with the DOF.
Okay.
Because with a good DOF and a good decent and a halfway decent monitor, you are able to play a good virtual pinball machine. But it's like...
DOF stands for dicks on females, by the way.
No, it stands for Direct Output Framework.
Okay, thank you.
That's no problem. Just for the... Furthermore, DOF is for the toys inside. The toys are the solenoids, the LEDs, shaker motors and something like that. And minimum I would recommend you to get at least 8 solenoids, so you can have the clucking feel when the bumpers hit, like the solenoids are making chuck. So you get that feel, because when you remember playing pinball in the arcade or the bar, the first thing which come to my mind are the blinking LEDs and the sound of the bumpers, like pop, 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 pop.
Yeah, the haptics.
Yeah, the haptics, yeah. And with DOF, you get that feel. And having the right feel with a simulator is the much more important than the best monitor. So you will see that if you play in virtual pinball without a good DOF, it feels more like playing PlayStation. It's like you get that haptic out of it, you don't have that feeling.
See, I don't have DOF right now. In my setup, I was actually going to ask you. No, I might need to pick your brain after the show.
That's no problem. We can do that. So the next big part of a good virtual pinball machine is having the correct or the good monitors, like you mentioned before. This personally, I would go below 4K, because you are sitting or standing very near to the monitors, so getting higher resolutions, you can read more the instruction cards, you see every inserts much more, and it's much more fun to get that clear feeling. It adds more to the realism. And also a next big thing is if your monitor can handle more hertz so it can handle more FPS. The standards monitors are 60 hertz. And
if it can handle more hertz?
Hertz, also I don't know how to pronounce it correctly in English. It's
I'm
hertz.
I'm busting your balls. No, it's not hearts, it's hertz.
Yeah, in German it's hertz. I don't know how to pronounce it correct in English. So if you all know how...
I'm sorry, keep going. I'm totally fucking with you, brother.
So for everyone listen to us, so if you know what I'm talking about, the hertz, yeah, it's like the much...
Love you, buddy.
Yeah. I love me too. So, the more hertz your monitor can handle, the more FPS it can show to you. Example, if it can handle
less delay.
Less delay, less lag you can have. So example, if your monitor has 60 hertz, you can show maximum 60 FPS. If it has, as example, 1000 hertz, you can show 1000 FPS. So the more FPS, the more smoother the gameplay gets. I'm gonna make a link in the description. It's called, I believe, ufodisplay.com, something like that, where it shows you how it would look like if you have 60, 90, 120 hertz and something like that.
Very nice. Awesome.
It's an easy tool, online tool. You don't need to pay something. It's a free site where it shows a little UFO scrolling down your monitors, so you can check what resolution is your monitor and something like that. The more money you have to spend, the better the monitor should be. Like 4K 60 standard, and if you can afford, go 4K 120 or 4K 144. And as for you, I'm gonna link down.
They're not cheap.
They're really not cheap. They're around starting at $500.
Good investment, not cheap.
Yeah.
Good investment.
They're not cheap. They're $500 starting. That would be the 4K 60 monitor.
I have the Acer that you had recommended to me back in the day, my friend.
Yeah. This would be around $500 to $600 right now, depending on daily prices. That's a good standard monitor for 4K 60. I have it also in my cap. Really good coverage.
43 inches,
so it fits in a wide body cabinet.
Yep.
I'm gonna link it down below. I also link down below a 43-inch. I believe it's an Asus monitor with 4K 144 Hz. So far as I saw it, the best monitor out yet for virtual pinball machines, but also pricey. It's around $1,500. Yeah.
Ouch.
And also you need a very, very hard, decent graphic cards. Minimum a 30. What's the 30?
I think I have the NVIDIA 2060.
You need the 370. The 3070. 370 minimum for get 4K 144.
So I'd be fucked.
Yeah, you need a really, really good graphic cards. And then that's really, really important to get the good graphic cards with the good monitor. And you will also get that asked a lot. Oh, shouldn't I use just a TV, not a monitor? And
hope you guys saved your tax money.
Yeah. And everyone who asks TV, I always tell them get a monitor, because monitor normally have less input lag than TVs.
Low latency, right?
And the latency, yeah. For people who just didn't play virtual pinball right now, the latency.
Game mode fucking sucks. Game mode doesn't work.
For the people who don't know what we've talk about lag and latency is, and we talk about the moment pressing the button until the flipper is moving.
Milliseconds.
The milliseconds
mean a lot.
And there's a fun fact about that. A German gaming show made how on PlayStation 5 and Xbox and PC, how they had input lag. And the fun fact is, a PlayStation had around 18 to 20 milliseconds input lag, and Xbox also. The PC was around 1 to 5 milliseconds, depending on the game.
Big difference.
Big difference. From PC
Huge
to PlayStation.
Yeah.
And
what PlayStation? PlayStation, the new one?
The 4 was around.
Oh, the 4.
The 4 was 18 to 20 milliseconds. I believe it was the 4.
So if I were to fire up Spider-Man on Steam, and then play it on PlayStation 4, I'd notice the difference in.
Yeah, you will notice the difference between PlayStation and PC, but that's normal. It was more like they tested the controls of pressing the button on the controller until it moved something on the television. They also tested it with a monitor, television, and the best combination was PC with monitor with the less latency and lag of all the thing, with a keyboard and mouse.
That's what you want.
Yeah, so that's what you want.
I noticed the difference playing Mike Tyson Punch-Out
when
I had my old TV, when I was using it, playing it on the display I have now.
Yeah, I
noticed a big difference. I noticed the difference, yeah.
Because
I'd go to punch the guy and it would take seemed like a half a second later it would move.
Yeah.
And I was losing fights. And I was like, I'm badass in Mike Tyson. I shouldn't be losing fights.
Play more. Yeah. So,
I want to go on the record that I knocked Mike Tyson down twice.
Only on PC, and really would kick your ass. So, back to topic. Also, if you know playing real pinball machines only, and you don't play any PC games or something like that, you will immediately notice the difference between your real machine and the virtual pinball machine. You will always tell they have lag as hell. You will need. Your brain needs around 10 to 15 minutes to complement the lag, I would say. So the hardest part is having your virtual pinball machine side by side with a real machine, and then switch them side by side every 5 minutes. You won't hitting everything on any table. That's the hardest part and the biggest issue of any virtual pinball machine. It doesn't matter which one, the lag is always there, and you will notice it immediately if it stands side by side with a real machine. But if you're just a PlayStation gamer and you come to the virtual pinball machine, you will say, wow, that's fucking fast. I can hit every ball. And that's the difference. If you're a PC gamer or console gamer, you will hit almost everything. If you're a real pinball player, you will have the first 50 minutes hard to hit everything until your brain affects to the virtual pinball thing.
So, I just love it because I can't. I that's the only place I really can play like Twilight Zone, Theater of Magic, Tales of the Arabian Nights. I mean, there's no fucking places around here where I can play any of those games.
That's the biggest advantage of your virtual pinball machine. Yeah, that's the biggest advantage. You don't have only one machine. You have many machines inside one machine. It's like a simulator for all that thing. So that's really, really a big advantage. Play as many games as your SSD card can handle.
The biggest downfall that I found, and I own a Guardians of the Galaxy Pro Stern, like the actual physical pin, and I've noticed, yeah, of course, you know, something in the physical world isn't going to match what's in the virtual world. Obviously, it goes without saying, it's not going to, you can't compare the two. I mean, if you have the money, buy as many pins, buy as many machines as you want, but to me, when I didn't have a real pin and I played the virtual, it came very close to scratching that itch. It was very good.
It's very,
the only complaint I have is the point of view. Like, for example, like when you're playing Creature from the Black Lagoon, there's so many ramps overlapping other ramps, and it's kind of hard. It's a little hard to tell, like, what's what sometimes. Or, like, that's what I like the most about playing a real pin, is, like, you can move around
and the field of depth.
Yeah.
There's also a thing, the VR thing in the whole community. If you have a virtual pinball machine
and I've done that, yeah.
And you can play with cool. VR. That's really a good thing, so you can get that depth.
But it sucks because it's like a one-person thing. It's a one-person thing.
Yeah. It's also not for me, so I'd say let's let a VR thing out of this today, because VR is a whole new thing. We talked about VR in the last episode, I'd say. And it's a cool thing, not for me, but you can get that depth. You asked what also a good virtual pinball machine should have.
Controller board. I want to ask you about like iPack. A lot of people think iPack is the way to go with those controller boards.
Totally not. iPack is not the way you should go. Only you have it laying around and say, well, I don't need nudge or something like that. An iPack, better use it for a main cabinet or something like that. But in a virtual pinball machine, you don't need an iPack. You want a good controller board.
No, there's a price difference. Is there a big price difference? Or
there are many huge price difference between making the board yourself, if you can solder good, or buy it pre-made, or buy the original and something like that. Personally, I recommend always the Pin Control family. I used all of them in my builds. I'm gonna link down below my building vlog.
Now, is there a link that you can give people that live in the United States?
Yeah, I linked it down below because the shop sends worldwide, so that's not a problem. The Pin Control is the original one. It was first made in 2014, and it has the advantage so you can use just one board for inputs and outputs for your toys. Inputs for the buttons, outputs for toys. It also can use nudging without any other device, and it can tilt without needing of a tilt bob.
So it's got like a built-in accelerometer or whatever?
Yes. An accelerometer, you can use an analog plunger, you can use nudge, you can tilt, everything like that. And there are two
analog plunger, accelerometer for nudge.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome.
Everything in there.
All in one.
All in one board. There are two versions out there called the Pin Control 1 and the Pin Control 2.
And Pin Controller 2 is what you want.
Depending on many toys you want and how many inputs you want, I would recommend go the bigger one, which is more expensive, but every penny.
What are we talking?
150 to $200 roundabout.
Yeah.
And the Pin Control 2 are around $200, but you can have now, I believe, 20 inputs and 48 outputs, if I remember now correctly. As said, I'm gonna link it down below so you can.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do DOF and all of that other stuff, then it's kind of it's...
Yeah, you want that shit. You want that analog plunger, you want that nudging, and the pin control can do nudge in every emulator without need of an extra program, so it works right off the route. It works right out of the box. And you can get it out from vpin-shop.com, and the customer service of him is outstanding.
Good.
The next thing which you could make is a DIY board. It's called Pinscape board, based on the KL25Z board, I think. I always tell
I have. The Pinscape.
The Pinscape. It's a DIY solution where you need to solder and make the firmware yourself. You can get everything. I'm gonna link it also down below so you can read it up on if you want how to do that. I tested it once and I wasn't very happy with it. The advantage was you can program it how you like it, like every button to what you want and something like that.
The orientation, the buttons, yeah.
And but the biggest disadvantage I saw was like having the not the ability to tilt with it, and also getting the numbers right. It is very, very hard to get the correct numbers for nudging.
I think there's another analog switch off the board that will act as a plumb bob, but
yeah, with a tilt bob.
Looked into it.
You need to add a real tilt bob, then you can tilt it. That's the difference between the original, the pin control can tilt without need of a tilt bob, and the Pinscape can't. And by the way, why I say always the original...
So the Pinscape card has it kind of programmed into it, or
no? You need to add a real tilt bob as a button for tilting. As far as I know, I may be wrong here, but I can't remember if anyone was able to get a tilt without a tilt bob with the Pinscape. I may be wrong right now. If not, you can write down a comment here, but I may be correct. So, and also the numbers of getting the nudge correct. Everyone I helped now, which are around about 800 people over the world, setting up the PC, everyone with the Pinscape had problems getting the nudge set up correctly. They had numbers, I said, what the fuck. With the pin control, you have the nudging gain around 150 to 160, depending if you have a white body or a standard body. And with the Pinscape, they had numbers starting at 1000, ending up to 9000, getting the nudge halfway decent correct. And it's very hard for that. And then the next option out there is called the Virtual Pin Plunger board, which I highly don't recommend. Stay away from Virtual Pin. Those boards are always fucking you. You can read it yourself on the censorship forum about everyone with the problem of the Virtual Pin kit. As soon as you start adding DOF, the board will have an outage, they're gonna blink, and Windows don't recognize it anymore. And the fucking thing is, they use an optic sensor plunger, not an analog plunger. They use an with a light bulb inside, so it measures how far you pull back with light. And those things didn't work correctly. I had a Virtual Pin V2 and V3. I both ordered them from America here to Europe, and when I built it in here in my Virtual Pin, then I had a problem. It didn't work correct, and then I wrote Noah, hey dude, your thing doesn't work correct. And he was like, nah, I'm too dumb to wire up correctly. And I was like, no, I'm not too dumb to wire up correctly. It doesn't work. As soon as DOF starts clacking, your board gets kicked out of Windows. And then he was like, nah, I'm too dumb. It's all your fault. And I was like, okay, I don't buy any more from you. See ya next time. So I can't really recommend the Virtual Pin kit. If you have the Virtual Pin kit, have a look at the Pinscape documentation. You can make the Virtual Pin to a Pinscape, which is much better firmware than the Virtual Pin. So that's the three birds. The three boards I would say that's the most important ones here for the Virtual Pin cap. All including nudging, which is very important. Having the ability to nudge a Virtual Pinball machine, because in real you also nudge a pinball machine so you can save a ball, or you know, if you play a thing, you kick the machine. Part of the experience, yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the strategy of having a good game, is knowing, not muscling it to death, but a little pressure here and there to get it control, keep the ball back in get the ball back into control.
Yeah. And then the next thing which you should consider...
Pinball's not the same without any sort of nudge. And I hate those games that shake everything. Like, at games, they have like a bunch of Gottlieb tables where it's like, there's a button to nudge it.
Yeah, the button.
And you hit it, and the whole playing field shakes around like there's an earthquake. That's not nudge. That's not nudging.
Yeah.
That's just
especially all of the
Vpins,
so pre-made from 2014. They had button nudge. Like you saw many with iPads inside them, and you press the button, like you said, to nudge the ball, which isn't nudging. It's crap.
No.
It doesn't play like a virtual.
That's
like
not
a
the experience.
It's not experience. No. The next thing which you consider is getting a real DMD or an LCD DMD or a monitor as a DMD. If you want to get a real DMD, go get yourself a Pin 2 DMD, not a virtual.
Yeah, a lot of people have questions on programming those. Myself included. Like if you had an Addams family, let's say, how do you even go about beginning to program that?
That's now depending if you have a real pinball machine or do you want to use them on a virtual pinball machine. That's
real. Like let's say I owned the real Addams, how would I program that?
You have several options. You can buy them either pre-made from a store where you sell them pre-made, or you can build it yourself, because the Pin 2 DMD is normally a DIY project, but there are some sellers which are selling them pre-made, and then with the Pin 2 DMD you pay a little fee to Lucky One, or and with the fee he pays the
they look good.
Let me explain. With the fee he pays the child hospital for cancer patients, and buys them once a year toys with that fee. So now with your real pinball, you then say, I want to have in one color, like an orange or purple or something like that. That's depending on you. Or if there is a colorization available, you can get them colorization for, normally you get them for free or some couple of bucks, like I believe 10 euro or $20 or something like that. And then you place the files on the SD card, put the SD card on the Pin 2 DMD, and then build them and exchange the DMD with the real DMD. It's not that hard to do.
It's not. I think I was going to ask you about the harness. Is the Molex connector different? Is the ribbon cable different? Are the connectors different?
I really should now say I don't know it. The last time I placed a Pin 2 DMD in a real machine was my father's Dirty Harry. And if you saw my videos, I had a Pin 2 DMD in my virtual pin. And after a couple of weeks was like, nah, I don't like it. I want a monitor inside. And then I used my Pin 2 DMD and gave it to my father for his Dirty Harry at his workstation. And we built it in, but it was 3 or 4 years ago. So if you really want to know how to add a Pin 2 DMD into a real machine, better ask a vendor who sells the Pin 2 DMDs. They can tell you how to connect them correctly. So I don't be the idiot.
Doesn't seem a lot of people in the States sell those. It seems to be more of a
because they are cheaper to make them yourself. You can get around $150 for everything if you want them DIY. It's a cheap alternative to color DMD.
It's been interesting to understand all the different pieces and parts and what goes into building a Vpin. Thank you.
If you want more information about Pin 2 DMD, just go to pin2dmd.com. There's a whole explanation of what it is and how to do and what you need and everything else. All files you find there. This is not personally. I choose the monitor solution, which I would also recommend everyone over the Pin 2 DMD. First, it's cheaper. Second, it's easier to set up and more versatile. Also in the future, when more and more games are using videos, you will be happy if you have a monitor instead of Pin 2 DMD. So that's the most important parts you should consider at first, before start buying or building a virtual pinball machine. Then the next thing which I would recommend is, before buying everything, make a list what you want, and then buy as most things as you can have before you start building it or buying
as much as you can afford.
Yeah, as much as you can afford. And out of personal experience, your money gets out very fast, and then you start, I'm gonna edit later. You will never edit later. It will take you years before you edit later. It's like having in your cellar an old light bulb. And you say, I'm gonna add another light there when I have money. 3 years later, there's the same old fucking light bulb hanging there, and you say, no problem, I'm gonna edit later. Same. Now, the next thing which you should really do before start building, watch as many videos as you can on YouTube and something like that, how others build virtual pinball machines, and read as much as possible about building a virtual pinball machine. And then start with the hardware first. The software is easy. You can get help everywhere from Visual Pinball Junkies Group and the forums. The software is not the hardest part. For me, it was the hardware, getting everything wired up correctly. And the recommendation is, build it complete. And at my first virtual pinball machine, which I built 2016, I didn't have in my back box, and I didn't have a panel for the speakers. And it took me almost a year before I started making the panel for the speakers. So it was like, I can play it. It was fun. I don't need a panel. And as soon as more people are getting over here, I was like, fuck, I want a panel which cover up the monitors and the speakers and something like that. So
yeah, you should link to some shots of your game.
I'm gonna link down below my building vlogs. I made videos about all of them. If you want to see all of my videos around about an hour, it would help you to choose a couple of ways which I made in the first one and my second one, which I made differently, like having the monitor on different angles and something like that, so you can choose what you want.
Yeah, different angles.
Yeah, and you see some impressions, so you can have it easier for you to choose how you want to make it. Like I said, read and watch how others build a cabinet. Then last but not least, when you choose what you want to buy and what you want to build, do a research for the shops where you want to shop. I'm gonna link down below shops which I can recommend, which are but only Europe or Germany especially, because I can't really say good shops up in America or something.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research, man, to find some places around.
Yeah. As every seller in the internet, there are some black sheeps out there which are scamming you. Do a really easy Google search, read about customer service and shipping service and shipping terms. Some people will tell you, you're gonna get your goodies at 3 days, then they will need 3 years. The next one says 8 weeks, and the ships in 2 weeks and something like that. Read about before you buy. Like I said, I'm gonna link down some shops which I can recommend, which are from Germany, but they send as far as I know worldwide, but it then could take longer. I can't tell everything about or anything about American sellers or other sellers in the world because I didn't shop there, or I didn't shop there really. Only in Marco Specialties, I shopped there once. It took me about 3 months to get from US to Germany because they sent a whole bunch then at once. So I can't really say they're good or bad. Maybe Ace can tell me some good pinball sellers in the US, and I'm gonna link it also down below.
Yeah, can't think of any right now.
Like Marcos, he's a well-known name in the whole world. Yeah, Marcos.
Yeah, Marcos. Yeah, Comment.
Yeah, and something like that. It's the only seller I know from US right off the head. So that's really important to get a good vendor. So you have problems, you can contact them. And
Titan.
Yeah, they help you when you have a hardware problem. That's also very hard, and they also should give you an complete instructions on how to wire everything. Yeah, I saw already some sellers just sending boards and toys out there, but you don't get wiring instructions how to wire it up correctly, and then you're gonna blow up your boards. Also, which you could consider is buying a pre-made virtual pinball cabinet. And there are also many differences between a good made one and a bad made one. I can only talk for myself. The virtual pinballs from vpin-shop.com are superior, which I played. Stay away from those cheap Chinese made cabinets, which are around 3,000 bucks here in Germany. I can't tell how much they cost in the US, but You see them then with advertising 3,000 games on it, and then you see they have an old crappy i5 and full HD monitors inside. They're really crap. Don't buy them. You will have to make so many things to get a thing good going and have fun with them.
That's what she said.
Another thing which you could consider is modding an older virtual pinball machine, which you can buy pre-owned, or having one of those arcade one-ups when you want a small one. So mod them. There are also videos out there on YouTube where you can see how they modded, and I would say a mini virtual pinball machine from arcade one-up to an halfway.
I'm not into those. I'm not a fan of those. It's too small for me.
I played some mini pinballs 2 times here at Vpin shop, and it was fun. It was like having such a thing in your van or camper. If you're gonna go camping on the campsite, it was fun having it there. But just only have it at your home, it was like, nah, it doesn't feel right.
No.
More like a toy. Yeah.
See, I have a very different setup. I have a like VP cabs, the vertical. So I have it set up that way when I play Pinball.
Yeah,
and then I can rotate it to play like my House of the Dead or Time Crisis or Mario Brothers or Zelda.
The vertigo is not as good as to play pinball as a real pinball machine or cabinet. It's harder. So because of the nudging and such things. You have any questions left?
I have a little bit. I'm sure I'm missing something, but I think I'm pretty good for right now.
Yeah. If you have questions, just write it down below in the comments. We try to answer it as good as possible. Or write it in the Visual Pinball Junkies Group. There are so many people who can help you if you have any questions. There are also some commercial sellers out there which want to help you and then sell you some things. They all have the community rules, like we don't sell with pre-installed games and stuff like that. Read about them. Read about the different options. I'm going to link down below the vendors I can recommend. I'm going to link down my building vlogs, and I also link down below to our group. Click it. And I'd say let's close this episode for today. My name is Bambi Plattfuss. I was your host today. Ace Danger, our co-host. And we hope that you will listen to us on our next episode from Almost Pinball.
Bye.
Bye.